welcome to today's webinar, Marketing Your Business, Storytelling, Visibility, and Community Center Branding, which will be led by our guest facilitator, Tran Vu. But before we get to that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about YW Boston and the V360 program. Just going to share my screen. So, YW Boston is part of the wider YWCA network. There are a couple hundred chapters all over the country, and even a couple of international branches. We all have the same mission, which is we're dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Um, And different YWCAs do that in different ways. Um, and we do that here at YW Boston through our programming. And one of the programs that we're doing this year is We360. We360 is, we're in our pilot year of We360. However, um, this is a program that YWCA National has been running in different cities throughout the country, including Charlottesville, Houston, Chicago, New Jersey, and South Florida, to name a few. And we're also using their curriculum for the program. So there are 8 modules in the We360 Empowerment Series. For people who join the We360 program, we have various cohorts, and every week participants complete the curriculum asynchronous, and then they come to a session. 7 out of our 8 sessions are virtual, and we have one in-person session, the first one. And based on the topic, so for example, when we have human resources or marketing, we have a We360 guest facilitator who's an expert in that topic come and join the cohort, provide their own perspective and expertise while also leaving some time for Q&A. YW Boston's We360 program is meant to provide aspiring and early stage women entrepreneurs with the foundational knowledge, skills, resources to start and grow successful businesses. After the 8 weeks, um, oh, we have our learning outcomes here. I'm not going to go too deep into them, but this program is really meant to help people gain the foundational skills that they need, um, whether that's understanding financial statements, learning how to set up your business processes, working on your marketing plan, all those type of things, while also growing your network and meeting other entrepreneurs who are on the same path as you. After you complete the 8 weeks of foundational courses, you move into part 2 of the program. That's where you meet folks from other cohorts. And we have We360 small group coaching sessions, again, separated by topic. We have We360 speaking engagements, which is today's event. And it's going to give you an idea of what it's like to be part of the We360 program. With that, I would like to introduce our guest facilitator for today. So, Tran Vu is a Boston based artist, creative entrepreneur, communication strategist whose works center storytelling, community engagement, and social impact. She's held leadership roles in arts and nonprofit organizations, helping develop campaigns, public programs, partnerships, and creative strategies that connect organizations with the community they serve. Through her artistic practice and the 1975 A Vietnamese Diaspora Memorial Project, Tran brings experience building visibility around mission driven work while creating authentic and culturally grounded narratives. She's passionate about helping entrepreneurs communicate their value and strengthen their community relationships and share their story with clarity and purpose. And with that, I will hand it over to Tran. I also would like to provide a reminder to you all as we go throughout today's webinars. You can use the Q&A function to ask questions. Tran, take it away.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Robert, for that lovely introduction and to your team, just for all the wonderful work and really critical work that you are doing through IW and this program. My name is Tran, she, her. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I know it's, beginning of August. There's so much going on, and so just really grateful that you're able to join us this afternoon. I'm really excited to talk about marketing, amplifying kind of our work and what we're doing so that we engage our audience and community. So kind of what Barbara said, my facilitation style is very immersive and interactive. So I encourage you to ask questions and just really engage with the content. And I'm also happy to connect more even after as well. I really want this work to be helpful. And if there's any way to support kind of in the work that you are doing, please keep me posted and just excited to get started. So I know we're on kind of webinar style, but again, and we're just so much happening these days, and it's all the more important to how we hone in on our story, our messaging, and really using kind of available tools and within even our existing network. So I'm going to start with some slides, but I really want to really use them just not to as a bouncing off, but really in how do we build kind of conversation and what is working for folks, what is not, and what are the questions that you're still grappling in this moment. So by no means is this webinar going to answer all your questions, but it's a good starting point. And from there, I'm hoping that will open up even more questions and things to consider. So share my screen right now. Okay, everyone see this okay? Let's see, start with the slideshow. Okay, so yeah, so the title is Marketing Your Business, Storytelling, Visibility, and Community-Centered Branding. I always start with a land acknowledgement. Where I'm presenting from virtually today is the original homeland of the Mashpee, Wampanoag, Akina, Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and the Massachusetts tribal nations. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous communities and people still connected to this land on which we gather, past, present, and future. I invite you to join me in acknowledging all of this as a shared responsibility to make good of this time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. So I like to start with this as a way to ground ourselves in the spaces that we occupied, knowing that there's so much history and stories that are still a part of that continues to build, and also the painful history as well. And from that, I'd like to transition in thinking about one is one of my favorite African proverb that says, if the lion does not tell her story, his or her, the hunter will. And it's a way to really ground ourselves in really how do we own our own story, our own narrative, and build it in a way that that speaks to the integrity and to the heart of the work and business that we're trying to build. So I always try to keep this in mind, and it's always if we ourselves don't tell our stories, someone else will, and they can frame it in the way that they want. And in the case, the hunter. So I wanted to keep that in mind. A little bit more about myself. I'm here because I love talking about storytelling that includes creative resiliency, sharing tools and strategies for artists, creative to be more sustainable. I like to think of all of us as artists and creative because there's so much that we're utilizing our creativity and to build our practice and to build our businesses. I'm a Vietnamese American artist whose work draw from my experience as an organizer, trainer. I also do some consulting work with media, journalism, and radio. And so I also support independent producers as well. And so I like this image is I'm an artist, but this doesn't mean that I work for free. And so a lot of time, I know a lot of folks, do things for exposure, different things, but in considering how are we compensated for the work that we do? And so that's also a narrative that I also want to pass on. So a little bit about my background. I came here, my family and I, as political refugee from Vietnam. This is post-war. There's me and my family at the airport. I'm there in the pink. You can see it like, and then I grew up working class in Dorchester and South Boston. And so again, this is to help ground. And when I find that when we tell our stories, people tune in more. There's such emotions that comes with it. There's such history. And this is really our Genesis stories, thinking about ways that people can also see how to place us and how to, especially geographically, location-wise, communities too. So I often start out with that. And this is also a way it's like, oh, yeah, when we introduce ourselves, people also resonate with that more. They see kind of threads of connection. And as I was saying earlier, I really believe that everyone is an artist. Like art is a human right, and how do we utilize our creativity in the ways that we build, in the ways that we create? And then up next, I just want to share this like 3-minute video, but it's also a way to really build our messaging with our audience. And I highly recommend if you're able to have access. And now with the digital era, with so much video content, video is such an effective way to get people to tune in. Just think about the type of media content that we all consume. And of course, now with our attention span and the noise that's happening, I find that the shorter, the better. And even then, what will again captivate your audience kind of attention and get them to engage? It's not just a one-off thing, but again and again. So I love to show this video that I made in production like a few years ago, but I find it to be evergreen, and I'm always thinking, do I need to kind of update it? So have you take a look? For me, the arts is a way to bring people together, to spark conversation, and to create spaces for healing and hope. The world as it is so reflective of our histories, policy work, and people who are at the table and who are not. And so thinking about initiating change through the arts and culture is so important, and it's a part of my calling, utilizing the arts to engage people and to bring them into the conversation and the flow. My name is Ngoc-Tran Vu, and my business is Tran Vu Arts. I create a variety of multimedia using painting, drawing, photography, and really thinking about installation, public art that really engages with the community wherever I'm at. My work is so informed by both my lived experience and also my framing of the world through a social justice lens. The intentional message and also the material, the colors that's used, the texture, how does this translate? Every project is different. There's not a starting point, but it's like I feel like I'm constantly kind of in conversation and just observing the world, being really immersed in pop culture and what's happening. It's really reflective of the narrative that I'm surrounded by. I really think about my art as a practice that engages community stories, past, present, and future. I was born in Vietnam, and my family and I came to the US when I was 4 as political refugees. And we grew up in the Boston neighborhoods, coming from a working class backgrounds, thinking about my community members who don't have access to certain opportunity and resources. So when I do my artwork, I'm really mindful of the lived experience of my family and also wanting to advocate for change. Some of the social issue that I've been working on for years now has been around housing work, displacement work, the legacy of war, and the legacy of memories, and how that still remains individuals that have been affected through migrations, displacement, by trauma. Some of my works have lived on community walls of a neighborhood restaurants, in public spaces, public art that really engages with the community wherever I'm at. I also teach as an educator. I lead workshops. I offer commissions. I also consult. So I also work with different cultural and arts organizations throughout the US and also throughout the world too. The arts and culture is such a beautiful way to both reflect the times that we're living in, to reflect the issues that we're grappling with, to provide paths for healing, for unity, for hope, and for transformations. Awesome. So yeah, like I mentioned, kind of video work is a really important, um, I think, tool in the times that we're living in. So, consider kind of the videos that you're watching, whether it's on social media or in different kind of digital spaces, and pinpoint what is effective about them and what is kind of the messaging that you're getting. And that's a part of, again, building our stories, marketing, kind of visibility. I also like to kind of point out this is one of my favorite quote, and this is from X-Men, for those who follow before. Be like Storm. She's one of my favorite characters. She's like, she would often arrive first. She would do something simple for her, and then she would fall back and let the other X-Men come and lead. It was such a great example of what it meant to be a leader and creating space for other people. I will never forget seeing that every week, seeing the restraint that she showed with such incredible power. And this was from the activist Ray on NPR asked me another, and I wanted to really tie that into what it means when we're building different kind of asset, different kind of tools, our storytelling, and what does it mean to step back to and see the bigger picture, seeing the people around us, as really team players, who are the people that are helping to share kind of information, tools, and what it means to we're our own kind of like leaders within our practice, our businesses, and so kind of sometimes taking that step back and not always like rushing to do the next things, which I know happens a lot. I'm guilty of that too. But what does it mean to really step back, really assess the situation, whether it makes sense to follow through something right away or kind of wait and see kind of what makes sense. Um, so yeah, so leading into kind of the next around kind of like values and visions. For me, I'm always thinking about what are kind of like the intention. Who's the audience? Who is it really for? When I'm building a project in my kind of arts practice, what is the goal of this project? For example, I've done a few murals, so I'm like, what is, my message in this mural? Who's the audience? Who is walking around? Who's going to see it? Who do I want it to be for? Sometimes, how you create it, it's like you want it to be for a particular audience, so you want to, make that really clear. What are the narrative, the stories that's being told through the kind of the artwork, being uplifted, and if it was a process to get there, who is at the table to build that? How can this process be more inclusive and accessible? And this is within the realm of my kind of art practice. And I often try to tie it to larger conversation. Is the message in this work that I'm doing, is it connect to something greater, to what's happening in the news right now, in our world, in our communities? How can we really connect this, and at the same time, like be a part of that kind of healing process with ourselves and one another? And this is particular to kind of the values and vision of my arts practice. So I often, would invite you to consider this in your own kind of work. What are kind of the values and vision that you're trying to build? I also want to, I usually map it out too, kind of like within our ecosystem. And this is from the Creative Commons back during the pandemic, and thinking about really the heart of like, using kind of equity, liberation, justice, solidarity. What are the roles that we kind of occupied, whether as storytellers, as caregivers, as builders, frontline responders. So thinking about the roles that we occupy is it's not often just once, sometimes it can be multiple at once, and we transition between one or the other too. So thinking about, kind of that role and kind of the ecosystem of how we place ourselves. And so with that, I just want to be sure I'm seeing. Okay. Someone's trying to miss. Okay. So the first part that I wanted to get into, and I alluded to this, is understanding your audience. Part of that is really kind of the who, what, where. I often break it down to who are you trying to reach. take kind of that assessment of, your practice, your business. Who exactly are you trying to reach? Is it community members, partners, funders, policies, media, and customers? And this is a good way to kind of break it down so that sometimes we have multiple audience, and depending on the space that we're in, it's really important to consider that because it helps us both hone our message and have a more narrow kind of focus. Um, because otherwise, sometimes this, and that's part of like kind of like the takeaway. Don't try to reach everyone because oftentimes then your messaging becomes kind of all over the place. So in trying to like really understand your audience, answer kind of the direct question, who? It could be that primary audience. There can also be a secondary too, but who is the audience that you're trying to reach? And this will help kind of hone in on your message and helps you kind of consider kind of your audience. If it's the community members you're trying to reach, that's a whole different than like reaching funders, for example. Language may not have to be as, fancy, for example, things like that. It could be more, direct, something that people can hear directly and more simpler. Oftentimes when I'm trying to reach like, for money, for like, when it comes to funders, there's certain like, language that has to be a part of that so that, it's more kind of common. But if it's community members or local partners, it takes a different kind of like narrative kind of shaping. So I often think about kind of really identifying the who. The next one is kind of what, identifying with each of the audience members, audience kind of, what is it that they care about or need? What problem are they trying to solve? What would make them pay attention or take action? Again, these are, questions, but if you take it with each of the audience, it helps, it breaks it down. So the difference between, again, partners versus media, it makes it a different thing. So with partners, depending on kind of the relationship, you're like, okay, well, this is what they want to partner up with me. So they're also, getting something. We're also getting something. Whereas with media is very much like, sharing kind of content. So there can be coverage. So that takes on a whole different spin in terms of kind of like what. And then also, lastly, kind of where can you reach your audience? Because you want to understand your audience, but you want to understand also where they're at to best really send the message and know where to place it. So, some of the things like email, social media, community events, newsletter, trusted messengers. Meetings, local organization. So in pinpointing the who, kind of the what and the where, it narrows it down to if you're trying to reach more community members, going to more local events. If it's more, business partner, local business, media. So it helps it narrow down exactly where people are that can help, pay attention and take action to your message. And the main takeaway from this is don't try to reach everyone. I really identify your priority audience, understand what matters to them, and meet them where they already are. A lot of this I notice is really already existing. So it's just more a matter of really connecting the dots, all of which we know, but sometimes it takes that kind of sitting down and being like, okay, this is I'm identifying this and where they are, and then really following through on kind of where kind of that space is in the audience. Um, yeah, let me know if there's any things that are coming up for folks. So yeah, like I said, it's immersive. There's like questions and things like that. Kind of due to time, I'm also going to try to like, move along. But again, if there's any questions that are coming up for folks, I think my screen might be a little types of that. Okay. Um, so after understanding your audience is about creating kind of a clear message as part of that, as part of the storytelling, part of the kind of the marketing. The what is it that you want people to know? And again, not with like, it's better to really be focused and narrow in than to try to be too big because then it gets a lot of things can get lost. So what is it that you want people to know? Focus on one main idea. Again, not everything at once, but if it's as simple as if you're creating a candle business, for example, you want people, candle is going to help create like, a calming atmosphere, a way to create aroma, for example, make it that message just really clear. This is what, the message is. And then, you can't like, of course, there's like, different benefits to having to, buy a candle, but focus on that really clear messaging that you want people to understand and to get from this the special candles that you're selling. And then the why is always like these days, I is a lot of it is around kind of impact. Why should people care? What is it about, what difference, this set of, candles that you're selling from someone else? What is it about them? Can you evoke kind of like a memory? Can you evoke something that people can resonate and tie to that? So, is the why. And then the now what? What do you want them to do next? Is it you want them to, purchase it, give it as a gift, pass on, spread the word? So really have a clear kind of action item so that people know how to really follow through and make it as easy as possible. If you're sharing, this message on social media, make it like, hey, give people like a direct thing. I want you to share this with one other person or like five other people. Just make it really clear so that people know, like, okay, this is what the call to action is, the message. And yeah, with that, keeping it simple, specific, and easy to repeat and like really direct. So as part of kind of creating that message, you also want people to know why should they focus on this, the now what, and really simple overall, just making it really clear so people know what you're trying to tell and how they're able to kind of receive it. And I know this can be sound as, as simple, but all across when you take a look at kind of the messaging that's out there, sometimes things are very complex than it needs to be, and it gets really muddled up when it's just like so many things at once. So really what I've learned is that the simpler you can make things, the better, just so that it's clear and people understand what you're trying to do. That's really, and for those who are also working across different languages too, different community, making that also really clear so that it gets translated across language, across culture, so that people understand what it boils down to, what you're trying to get them to engage. Um, so for now, I know this, information I share. I'd love to kind of break it into an activity that we all could do. The activity is what is your two sentence, and this is around kind of honing in on your message of your practice, your business. So I love us to take a second to take about 5 minutes or so, just hone in on this, and then we'll have an opportunity to share this. So starting right now. So those just joining, the activity is what is your two sentence? What is being clear around what you're offering and what you're asking people to do? Couple more minutes, and then I'll also answer some of the questions that I'm seeing pop up in the chat.
And Tran, do you want people to share their two sentences in the chat when they're done?
Yes, yes, we'll share it soon in about like 2 minutes. Yeah, yes. So while you're finishing your two sentence, I'm just gonna address some of the questions that I'm seeing pop up in the chat. Um, so Connie, to your question, do you find that you needed an arts degree? Not necessarily. There's always that question of like, do you, go to the art school or not, or practice on your own? Same thing with so many like even business school. Do you have to go to business school? I think I'm of this mindset of like nature versus nurture. If you want a place where you can, hone in on your skill set and you're really clear about that, more education, oh, it doesn't hurt, I mean, of course, with, debt and stuff these days, there is a chance, but I think if you find that you want more skill set in certain things, that's the track that you want to go. But then there's also things where you're self-taught too. And I find that to be really like, invigorating. Now we have so much digital tools, so much like content on YouTube, and so many people, places that people are sharing their knowledge. There's so much that I find I can learn on my own. So if your question is an arts degree, I would say not necessarily, but it also depends on the skill set too. If it's, more glass blowing for me, that's very specific. I may need more like kind of training around that. But I can find like a local studio. I can find like an artist that can also teach me, and I can also learn kind of content too. Um, And then Sandy asks, I think, to Van, yeah, what motivates you to keep creating art every day? That's your why for your business. When starting a business, it's not easy in the day to day. You might have lots of idea, but not everyone will work. Sometimes it can be frustrating. That's very true. Like, for me, what keeps me motivated, and to be clear, I don't create art every day. A lot of it is actually a mix between creating art and on the business side of things. So the business side of like marketing my work so people even know about what I'm doing, talking to partners, people I can collaborate with. If a school or an organization reaches out to me, that's part of, being able to stay in my practice. And so I would say it's almost like even 50-50%. Sometimes even the business side even take over because I have to follow up with clients, with partners to make sure that I have projects that are set up. And then other times, I try to squeeze in studio time or have teams to help me with some projects that might take more capacity and time. So my why is like it really keeps me going. But sometimes there's so many elements of sustaining a practice, making sure I'm able to market myself. I have information on social media that people can find me and ways that people can engage. Um, yeah. And then, yeah, so continue kind of the questions flowing. And so right now, one more question that someone's asking. How can I create a system to sell? Um, that's a really big question. And I feel like there's so many ways to kind of break down that element. Is it to sell? Is it a product? Is it a practice, services? Um, I would say like, just to start even thinking, really defining the need. Is it like, what you're trying to sell? Is it a need right now who are other people that are doing similar things? Usually when you look towards, that can also gives you clue into how, things are going about. Is it working? Is it, something that's, like an ongoing need for people to, want to, participate in it? Or is it like a one-time thing that people have to be convinced? So there's different ways to it, especially in the world of like marketing, branding, and storytelling. What is like the need that people are looking for, and how do you are best fulfilling it, or best, inspiring them to want to participate. So that's kind of roughly, to consider thinking about creating this kind of system. But of course, part of a system, but you have to make sure it's ongoing. People know about it, and people know where to reach out to you, and how do you continue to create ongoing, kind of work around that so people continue to follow up. So instead of it being a one-off thing, that's in the kind of the business realm, it's like how do we make this kind of an ongoing need and not just a one-off, for example, is a big thing that comes across. Awesome. Okay, well, yeah, keep your questions going. I see a lot of people putting stuff in the chat and everything. This what makes things really immersive, and like, and I always appreciate like continuing even the conversation after too. I happy to share my contact information after to follow up. So with that, I'd love to hear about some of the sentences, the two sentences that people are coming up with around kind of your practice and business. And again, this is, again, the snapshot of it. We're beginning to hone in on the message. If you haven't kind of started that kind of work already, this is a good way to boil down kind of that elevator pitch. Some may say, what is this two sentence that, you approach someone in an elevator, and they ask you, what is your work? How do you tell them? Um, okay. Someone said, I'm building Soul Roots, a housing stability and wellness initiative designed to help single mothers create stronger foundations for themselves and families. I'm currently building partnership to explore a pilot that combines housing, wellness, and financial empowerment. Wonderful. Yeah, I see these two sentences are also really like fill packed too. So it does give me a lot more, details and things exactly. So housing stability and wellness initiative. And it's like what it is, who is it for? Designed to help single mothers for what? And this you're currently in that, you're exploring a pilot. So it does answer like, the core questions of who, what, where, kind of why. And so, thanks for sharing that. I would add, it's just like, like almost like why now? It's just like almost like creating that sense of like urgency in this, and like you're saying who you're doing it for to help single mothers, but how can people, support and kind of participate in this too? So just words to consider as you're building kind of the next, set of like mission, vision, kind of values, for example. This is a good like elevator to say exactly hone in on what you're doing, but then more information in other ways so that people can engage more. Awesome. Okay. And Connie says, as an operation chief, my role is um, to build to a clarity, to be a clarity connector to ensure monetary success. Um, this clear on kind of what your role is, it would be helpful to be like kind of in the context of what Operation Chief. Is it part of um like a practice, a business, just a little bit more. You're identifying clearly your role, but to ensure monetary success, if yeah, so just a little bit more like specific to that's one sentence, maybe a second sentence on what is kind of the business or practice that you're embedded in. And when you said ensure monetary success, is that for everyone? Like most people want monetary success. So just a little bit more kind of details in it so that it clarifies kind of the context, Connie. Um, and someone else said, how do you translate your ideas to people? I'm great at coming up with ideas planned in my head, but have trouble verbalizing, translating it to others. I hear that. I mean, sometimes we all have like essentially monkey minds. We have a lot of ideas coming through, but how do we build it into actionable, items and steps to take? And that's part of, a business plan. That's part of just writing it down. Like now we have like, the phone, the notepad on our phone, on our computer, like just like documents and stuff like, and just pen and paper, like just writing it down, write a checklist. Like I find that when I write stuff down, it actually helps. And there's research that said that when you're taking notes and stuff like that, the act of just writing it down really helps build that kind of muscle memory. So I would say keep a notebook around you. Whenever there's ideas, write down your ideas, and you can also like even do it through like the course of a few days or a week. What keeps coming up again and again? Sometimes it's like the ideas that we have that like keeps us up at night. Sometimes it's like following what keeps, coming up for us, seeing almost like the pattern of things, and then like, slowly like writing it down. What is like, the next step that you're going to take, and really make really a specific plan to that. And this next week, I'm going to do this towards this idea to make it come alive. Sometimes, ideas can flow in and out too. We don't have to like almost go after every ideas, but it's about really honing in on the ideas that will get you going and to help kind of build and expand your practice. So I would say, yeah, so in terms of like translating ideas to people, and then from there, slowly seeing, you can also test out ideas too, to your networks, friends, family, people around you. It's like, hey, how does this come across? I always do like even with messaging and story stuff. I'm like, hey, how does this come across? Because of course in our head you're like, oh, this sounds good, but how does it come across to other people? And that's part of that audience building. We may identify, certain audience that we want to engage with, but is that message being heard for that particular audience too? So sometimes testing it out, even with like, even writing like for funders, some for example, sometimes you're writing something and you're like, is this translating what exactly I'm wanting it to say? And sometimes it's like keeping it really the most simple, the better, because when we add in too much, it gets really complicated. So boiling it down to what like the simple messaging so that it's clear, no matter if someone have an expertise or not, or someone walking down the street, they understand exactly what you're saying. And of course, it takes time too. It's not like we get it on the first try, but keep on going with it. So Sarah says, I partner with mission-driven organization to provide budget-friendly, approachable inclusion solutions. Connect me with one person in your network who leads a mission-driven org who cares about culture and employees. I like that. I like that, the first sentence you identify this is what you do. You partner with mission-driven organization to provide budget-friendly inclusion solution. I'll be curious if that's more like, kind of on like the financial side. And in the second line, you said like very a direct act, like ask, like call to action. Connect me with one person you know in your network who leads a mission driven, who cares about culture and employees. So the second sentence makes me think that it's more like an HR. The first one, it feels for me more like, mission driven, want to care about more financial side of things. There's the inclusion solution too, but I see like kind of the budget friendly. And then the second one makes it more like is about people culture and kind of that HR. But I like the direct call to action. This is what I do. Please connect me with someone that we can continue the conversation. It makes it very like clear and very actionable that again, people are like, okay, well, I'll come to find I know someone, let's, continue the conversation, let's talk more. And that's why you have your handy business card now in like kind of digital form too. There's for like digital cards online that you can do, or sharing your Instagram or LinkedIn, different ways, but making it easy for people to like, here's my card, let's follow up, let's have coffee. Sharon says, as a visual storyteller, I want to provide visual and marketing support to corporation, families, and community and branding opportunity, creating and storing family memories or experience and supporting events through the community as a visual storyteller. I want to provide, I'm going to read this again, visual and marketing support to corporation, families, and community and branding opportunity, creating and storing family memories for experience. Okay, so as a visual storyteller like that, I want to provide, so it's like visual marketing support to a variety. The audience is corporation, families, and community and branding opportunity. So I like you identify kind of who your kind of audience are in branding opportunity and storing family memories. So that's where for me it gets a little fuzzy. It's like so branding opportunity that makes sense for corporation, storing family memories and experience to events community through photography and marketing. Okay, and I see you add some things about photography and marketing. Okay, well, I think it's a good start. You identify your audience, you say what you're offering, and then for the why to support, events, community. It does for me read a little. It's a lot. I would say to simplify it to make it just even clearer because right now it seems like kind of like really one big long sentence. I would say break it up into two sentences at least, and to make it really like clear. This is your audience. This is what you're offering. Kind of the why. And then if your tools is photography and marketing, so photography is really clear. Marketing gets a little bit more into like this advertising, kind of digital. So if you can break that down a little bit more, that would be helpful. But that's a good start. Um, and then Sierra says again, my passion project also springs into uh, in the mirror here. Stumbling Through Growth is a podcast featuring honest conversation about life's journey with unexpected people. Share it with someone you know who's on a growth journey, but doesn't have to just be here from gurus. Okay. Like that too. I have, backgrounds in kind of media and audio too. So yeah, stumbling through growth. I mean, podcasts. A lot more people are listening to things. We have come kind of that up and down in terms of like the podcasting kind of world right now. Share it again. I love that. Get your action. You're like, okay, share it with someone you know who's on a growth journey. But yeah, I like that you also identify it doesn't have to be just someone who just want to hear from like a guide, a guru kind of teacher, but someone who can it can resonate, stumbling to growth. So even that, title is very, engaging. Um, so passion project, being clear, is it are you like the creator? Like are you working with a team? Um, is this a weekly podcast? Even narrowing in, is this a monthly? Do you people want people, I mean, they'll find more when they find it on the platform, but and where do people find it? Where's this podcast? Is it on the phone? Can they find it on YouTube? Making it really clear about where people can find it too. And you want people to you share it with someone who's on a growth journey, maybe navigating, an unexpected kind of like, happening and things like that. So I like that you say what it is and then on action, but then giving it, that kind of a growth journey. All of us are on our in different growth journeys, so in a way that really can resonate with a lot of different people. Um, And then, those I mentioned, Luxport is a luxury mobile wine experience bringing an interactive wine bar directly to private events. Guests explore curated wines through self-pour dispenser, tasting notes, pairing an elevated social atmosphere with a special commitment to creating welcoming, inclusive experience for women, women of color, in communities that have not always seen themselves represented in traditional wine spaces. We're transforming the traditional event bar into a space for connection, discovery, celebration, and community. Wonderful. It's really exciting. I can only imagine the visual that comes with it. So you're identifying, what it is you're doing, a mobile wine experience. Well, I kind of want to know what is a mobile wine experience, interactive wine bar directly. Okay, so it's like essentially like an app or something. That's a question that's coming to my mind. Guest explore, curated, kind of yeah, to like an event, experiencing for culturally inclusive for women. And then we're transforming the traditional wine bar. So this is a thing where the more visual, the better. So people hone in on exactly what it is. Like, step one, two, and three. If it's an app, help people contact. And then you can almost like give people like an image too. Like imagine you're at like, you're sipping your favorite wine or trying to explore wine from a different region, for example, almost like give something visual for people to like imagine themselves and then like and then say yeah like who you're like specializing for and how does this kind of break up what we see kind of in like the public space too. And it's super exciting, like celebration, community. It can even be like, like wedding events. It could be birthday, being even more specific too, like the holidays and things like that. But cool, cool name, and I'm excited to see how that kind of comes together. Um, Leah mentioned I partner with mission professional and organization to move through ambiguity to action, encourage clarity, confidence, and authenticity. I provide coaching, consulting, and facilitation that builds capacity, unlock potential, and turn dreams into strategic direction. So people and institution can live and lead in alignment with their purpose and values. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, some of the words that it's yeah, catchy words. People be like, okay, these this sound good. I do like, want to hone in. So you partner with professionals, so individual and organization to move through something to provide action clarity. So you help like individual and organization give more clarity into what they're trying to do, coaching, consulting, unlocks potential into strategic. So providing clarity for people, like coaching essentially. And so I would hone in because now so many places kind of offer even like I would say similar language. So what differentiate you from somewhere else? Is there a location? Is there like like maybe a story say that stands out? Because sometimes now people know the buzzword and everything like that, and also that can also get lost too. Like if everyone's saying similar things, it doesn't stand out. So what's going to set you apart? Is there a name? Maybe start with like a name. Start with, this is, what I do, who I work with, and what's different about me. Sometimes, now you have to stand apart from, a lot of people that are doing similar work. What makes kind of your work different, and that, again, honing on the messaging audience, but then providing tools and ways that will set you apart, whether it's like through branding, through colors, through certain logos, and all that too, and then word of mouth. Um, I create beautiful custom balloons, the core that transforms celebration into unforgettable experiences. I help family, business, and event hosts bring their vision to life. DM me today to book your next event. Yeah, that's cool. Like I would love to like that again, that's different, but balloon, like specializing in balloon. Maybe is there a name that you already have? Like so and so, like business X, this is what the business is about. So with this, it makes it personal. It's like you're doing it, and I'll be curious, is it just you doing it? Do you have a team behind you that also build like, oh, they're very experienced. They've been doing this for a long time. So you see in some business, people always ask, since 1975 or 1980, it gives it that longevity too. So it helps build that kind of trust that you've been doing this for a long time, you know what you're doing. Do you have a team around you? If not, I mean, you can phrase it in a way that like you provide like from beginning to end to make sure that you have exactly kind of what you're offering to for people to know. And I like that you're like very nuanced, like DM me today to book your next event. And so you again that action item at the end so people know exactly. So yeah, you can even put in like what is your tag? Like DM me, blah blah blah, so that people know. But yeah, starting with like, that unique kind of balloon, kind of the visual of it, how to help people, business, events bring their kind of their vision to life, utilizing kind of the the balloons for that. Um, Polychrome Punks would sell homemade tabletop gaming supplies that are more inclusive to women, BIPOC, and queer community. We want to represent the people that aren't as heavily catered to and give them fun accessory to enhance their gaming experience. Oh, that's cool. Like yeah, start out with the name, what you do, you sell handmade tabletop gaming supplies that are more inclusive. We want to represent that art in there. Um, and then to help enhance. So what can you find? Is this we get like how long have you been doing this? Come find meet us. Is it like, online? Is it in brick and mortar? How do people, get in touch? So it's like this is what you do. We want to represent people and like maybe I would say answer the question is like, but why? If you don't fall into this, can you still kind of benefit from these handmade? So I always make it so that you hone in on the audience that you want to like, serve, but then you also want to make it accessible for other people too. It's like in a way, the more the merrier, unless, you're just like, oh, this is only who I serve. But it's like this is who my target audience is. But everyone can enjoy this if you want, a better tabletop gaming supply experience. And then where can we find you online? Yeah. So I guess yeah, more details that continues this conversation, but I like the name, making it clear and what you want to do. Um, Rise Up Coaching and Consulting, empower individual and an organization to coaching, consulting workshops you do want to help. Yeah, so I like that how you clarified that. And says that I'm the anti-coach for people who don't think coaching is for them. If you like, I like that. See, that makes it more like personable. I'm anti-coaching because coaching is a very unregulated industry now. So I feel like coaching are popping up like everywhere, especially in influencer culture. So it's a way that distinguishes you. Okay, yeah, someone is very against it, but yet you want to help people. And I also associate with like, what's the difference between like coaching and therapy, for example? That's another interesting thing to like delve into. So yeah, like that. Program manager. How do I connect my teenage son? Okay. Okay, so last one for you. Heather says, I'm a program manager for a youth work that support young adults on their career journey from understanding their interest to landing a role. If you're on this journey, connect with me for support. Okay. Yeah, so you're already a program manager, you're guiding kind of like young people in their career kind of journeys. How do people get in touch with you? So yeah, so you're clearly defining kind of your role in that. And I see, yeah, nice staff and interest in that. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for this activity, and I hope that was helpful in seeing, real life example what folks are doing. And no, yeah, this is your 2 sentence. It can always be revised again, and we shifted a little bit depending on who's in that elevator with us. But always like, the who, what, when, like, and how do we get in touch with you? So make it memorable, give people a card. I still do the, old school card way because people have it in their hand. Of course, digital can also be helpful too. That can also be, but something where people can see it so they don't forget you. I actually even put my photo on my business card, but I do it into like a more like visual image, so people can also have a sense. Because sometimes you dig into your bag or something and you have so many business cards and you're like, I don't remember this. So this is I saw it from someone. They could literally put their image on their card. So yeah, so awesome. But yeah, so keep the questions coming. So I want to transition now into in our last half an hour together, building visibility and outreach. And this comes to around this idea of responsive versus reactive. And I see that a lot. And we have so much like content that are constantly bombarding us. And so I find like the algorithm, it changes so much. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even put much thought on a post and it reaches so many people. And then there are posts where I put more effort and I'm like, it's not reaching as many people. So I always really follow that, to understand comments, how is this coming across, and what I've come to is just like the more natural things are, it's more like when it's not so because sometimes when you plan so much, it nitpicks at everything and it's not as like, kind of the viral sensation. So it's that thing of like being responsive but not so reactive that you feel like you have to suddenly shift things around. So being responsive to the moments, to what's happening, so that you're meeting kind of your long-term goals. And so to kind of break that down, the reactive is you only communicate when there's immediate need, and which is, not the healthiest, especially in branding. Messaging is really all year round, like all the time. We're our own walking kind of like branding essentially. So what we say, what we wear, what we like, come across, that it in itself is we're building our brand. So being kind of reactive, you're posting when you have an event or announcement that doesn't create much like relationship building kind of with your networks, your audience. You kind of want to be posting more consistently, like maybe once or twice a week. And if you can do that consistently, you don't only throw things out when you have an event or something, because then it like, drops off. And to be honest, I'm guilty of this myself too, because it's hard, like keeping up with things can be, but really planning a calendar around it, say like plan it out like monthly, each month, a few weeks in advance so that you know this is coming up. And so there's that consistency. Reaching out when attendance or sales are low. Again, doing it consistently. I think one of the most effective kind of tools right now is having a newsletter, because that's something that goes directly to the inbox. Sometimes now I'm like subscribing to so many newsletter, but it's like, again, it reaches like your inbox. With social media now, the algorithm is hard unless you really tag people. So I find with social media, it's like I can see something, sometimes I don't, and I sometimes I really do try to avoid, because people, there's so much, and now people are going on their, closing down their phones when they can, technology. So sometimes you don't reach the audience that you want to. So I find that newsletter are really effective now. Again, it's another thing to maintain, but if you can do that consistently, you're reaching so many people. And when you meet people, you're like, hey, I'd love to add you to my newsletter, and, check in with people. And then, contacting partners only when you need something, responding to opportunity at the last minute. Again, I know we're all like, juggling a lot of different things, but the point of reactive is that when you only do something when it's an immediate need versus building out something, sustainably, something for the long term, whether it's short or long term. And so that comes into the responsiveness, building relationship and visibility consistently. And this is something that, is really across the board. Like, how do we not like, just only do things as it comes up, because it creates so many, even anxiety so much that we're trying to do all at once. But when we're able to plan something out, it gives us breathing room, it gives us time to shift and really to understand, is this effective? Is if not, how do I make these shifts so that it does reach the audience that I want to, and to really address the things that you're wanting to. So share your work and story regularly. Do that, again, it's according to our own like kind of, calendars too. If once a week works for you, if twice monthly, something that I always find that consistency is a lot better. Of course, sometimes there is like, breaking news. So you got something amazing happen. So you can't always plan around that. So sometimes that, spontaneity can also be good too. But as much as we can, really, when it comes to building relationship, like check in with your network, check in with, same thing with like family and friends, with partners, business partners, like around so that they know that you're in touch with them, not only when, again, when you need something, only. Of course, there are times when things come up, and so but by building kind of that consistently, people respond to you more. People are more likely to engage and more likely to participate and support your work. Stay connected with your audience between announcement, kind of with that, like call people up for coffee. We don't meet up, as often as we do, and more in person, like plan for in person things. Of course, scheduling and stuff like that, but it takes time and it really builds like memory, and it really builds like that connection more when you're able to meet someone in person, when you're able to create something that people will leave something more memory kind of in their mind of kind of like your work, your practice, what you represent. um, Pay attention to what your community needs and care about. This is something I always like recommend. Like show up to local events, show that you're here, what you're about, bring, if there's vendors opportunity, again, if that works for you. Read your local like newspaper, like radio, all this. People are always wanting to share information. And I find that again, when you show up, when we're in person, it shows that, there's a level of care there and people really remember you, and there's always opportunity that comes about. And when people are in person, I think they tend to be more open and sharing more than behind a screen or over the phone, for example. So how, really, and part of that is paying attention to what the needs are, the pattern of things locally, and really making sure that you want to be a part of these spaces too. And then lastly, adjust your outreach based on feedback and changing circumstances. There's never a one size fit all. Like so many things, shift with time. Just imagine like, since the pandemic till now, what has shifted? What are the needs? Are we buying as much toilet paper in bulk? Like there's certain things that just shifts. And so like tuning into that, tuning into what the feedback is now like, more than ever, we're like, inside our house more. How do we get people to go out? And so like show up and things like that. So just like but then of course you want to be mindful. There's always scheduling and things like that, but as much as you can like respond to your audience, respond to what you're hearing to comments, evaluation too after an event. Check in, how did that go? How could that have been done better? Just really now that we see so many surveys like constant, these like companies are reaching out, and sometimes I'm like they're asking us for like stuff that they should be doing themselves in a sense, but that's part of the research. They want to know what people are saying. But I also find that like um you know it's good information when you're asking your audience, when you're asking, that's good like feedback information to plug in on how you can clarify your business to be even more responsive and to be more supportive. And then, so the overall key takeaway is visibility is again built over time, not only when you need the attention. So the more that you can, stay close to like, the communities, talk to people, build your really in-person relationship, the more things can really open up. And of course, it takes time year round, not just like, oh, hey, I'm gonna do this and then like ghosts, which is like a big thing I feel like in our modern culture right now. People just don't respond, or just they just say something and they just disappear, which is almost sometimes like the worst, because you rather hear almost if someone can't make it, if someone can't do it, it's a no, rather than just like what is happening. It's like a back and forth. So you want to give people clarity because you're also wanting the same thing too. So being really clear, responsive, and being consistent around it, I find is really the best formula. um Here's how other are finding kind of with some of these things, like your experience with like reactiveness versus like responsiveness. And again, in the times that we're living in where a lot of things are unpredictable, and I think that really sets the tone for the culture too. But in what ways do we build upon the values that we want to continue to grow? And so that would be reflective in our mission, our vision, and the values that we put forth in our practice and our businesses. Okay. So the last kind of like thing focus is around community-centered branding, which I know all of us are embedded in our, respective communities, sometimes many crossover, and along with again staying connected. The four main thing is like listen, reflect, build trust, and invite participation. And I think this is what sets it apart from like really corporate kind of branding, which is, really ultimately about profit. Community-centered branding, it can be profitable, but it doesn't mean it has to like, take over or feel like it's one way or another or feel like it's totally like extractive. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of difference between really the community-centered brand and what it means to feed and continue to build over time as a collective. So listen, what does your community care about, need, and respond to? And that's part of continuing conversation, showing up to events, to churches, to temples, so many things where people are gathering. Where are people gathering? Are they gathering outdoors? Are they summertime, nice weather, and in other ways? Are they connecting digitally too? Where are people responding to? Who are they listening to? I always find like, community leaders, you know, find people, locate people that are, being very like, they have an audience and go listen to them, see what they're saying, how are they being effective. Reflect, do your visual language stories and values authentically that represents people you serve. So again, with branding, with logos, think about the colors that you want to, give off. Are these colors that work, like all year round? Is it, and in reverse, is it going to turn off people too, push people away? I know within like the Vietnamese, Asian community, there's certain colors too that people stay away from because it brings back, just so much history and so much things. So you want to be mindful, like, cultural responsiveness to the stories, language. If there's certain wording that people want to hear in directly their language, that's also things to consider as part of kind of the branding work. And then, building trust is such a core of it. On the same trend with like building partnerships, relationship over time. That's just not a one-off and then getting ghosted. But like, how do you really build so that you come back again and again? And that's part of that like longevity. Be consistent about it, be transparent. When something didn't work out, we can, always plan things and things don't always work out. But how do we really communicate that so people know that we're responsive and that we're, responsive and responsible to. It's not just, hey, I'm just putting this out there and whatever happens, happens. But it's like, no, I care about this. I want this to go well. I want to make sure that people are around me, kind of like supporting me on this. So that's part of that, honing in on that trust and that really makes it that core of like the community center. And then lastly, inviting participation. I see a lot of, the two sentences that people say, like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want people to join me. This is how you communicate with me. So create opportunities for our community to contribute ideas, feedback, and then even shape sometimes how our work is presented as an artist, when I've done like, large scale projects and things like that, I always invite kind of like feedback and openness so it doesn't feel like, oh, it's only like my project and what I want to do. But I want to make it because I'm going to show it publicly. I want people to feel like they're a part of it too. And not being open to that feedback. It doesn't mean you have to follow it all the way, but being open so that people know that they can come to you with like ideas and that is valued. So yeah, inviting that participation. Sometimes again, it doesn't you're making it open, but sometimes there's can be some challenges, circumstances or like navigating kind of conflict and difficulty, and that's part of that. When you open things up, that happens too, and so that a part of kind of even navigating, working through the really difficult times, so that it can also you can turn it around and leading it to like a better flow for your business and practice. And the key takeaway in this is really community-centered branding is built with people, not just marketed to them, kind of in the way I talked about, like corporation and like the extractiveness, but it's like how do you build with people, by people, in shared kind of like trust building kind of spaces. And that's again, that's what will differentiate your branding, unless you just straight on just want to make it like, more transactional, which is if that's the route that you want to take. But again, the truly making it community centered where that you really build authentic relationship with your base, with your network that continues to um, to move on so that it doesn't, not just a one thing time off. Um, yeah. And then I always start and kind of with some resources and then I'll leave some times for more Q&A or things that you want to bring up. It's just 9 type of rest, different ways because we're all like, there's so much happening these days constantly and we're juggling so many with as entrepreneur, as like creative people trying to, get things done, trying to move things forward. So don't forget to rest. I say this for myself as well, time away, permission to not be helpful doesn't always like you have to plug in and do something unproductive, connection to art and nature, solitude to recharge, a break from responsibility, stillness to decompress, a safe space, and time alone at home. Sometimes that might not always be possible, but just being mindful of like our health and ways that we can take breaks too, as a lot of this work really continues, and how we choose the direction that we choose, the partnerships, how do we continue to reinvent and like create, making sure that we embed kind of rest as part of that too. And this is from Brunch and Budget. That's like my notes from them. And then lastly, also sharing resources. I know we're all plugged in different ways, so love to kind of, the last couple of slides, just to share some resources. So y'all know, crowdsourcing. This is different ways to like build kind of relationship, patron, more like with your engaged fans, different way you can fund kind of your passion. There are some passion projects like, coffee, buy me coffee. So these are ways that people want to support you, family, friends, different networks that you can, put in your newsletter, put in your social media, different ways. Hey, we can, this is a way that you want to support my work. This was IOB was more during the pandemic. I think they still may have that. And then of course other fundraising platform, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe with like creative projects and even like film, large scale. But GoFundMe have been, when you're going through kind of hardships too, people have utilized that. And then YouTube and other stream using Venmo, Cash App, PayPal to kind of digital things. So different ways that we crowdsource. And I've seen so many, projects and teams that have done it so effectively. And it's also rooted in relationship. How do you continue to communicate? This is what your vision is. This is your process, being accountable, to that steps in bringing about kind of your vision to life. So it's, a work in progress, but seeing these are some tools that might be helpful in that process. And then digital education resources too. As a creative, these are leaning more on like the creative side, but remember I said we're all creative. Um, with Archive, Creative Capitals, right? Like Freelancer Union. They also have, a lot of digital kind of resources too to check out. And I, follow their newsletter just as resources, what people are talking about in terms of like marketing, branding, just different ways that we continue to equip ourselves kind of with resources that are available. And of course, YouTube is the biggest collection of like, resources, archiving things there too, which I know we all use, often, but just in case, other resources too. Um, yeah, and with that, love to open it up for remaining questions or comments. Um, yeah, and appreciate you all for sticking it through on a afternoon. Yeah, would love to hear any questions that you may have or things that even anything that you disagree with. You're like, well, I found this to be different. These are fine ways. So happy to be open. Awesome. Thanks, Steph. Appreciate it. Um, Anything that people want to talk more about too, anything that you're working through in this moment that you find like especially difficult or things that you're running up again and again? A few moments. If not, it also seems like things are really,
I have
yeah.
one question for you.
Mhm.
One of the things that we talk about in the We 360 program is that the business side of things. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about how you balance your creative endeavors with being an entrepreneur. Because people
Um,
have a lot of things they want to do, but there's all of that business type work that you need to do to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of it's very much connected. Being a creative is partly being like a a business and an entrepreneur. In the eyes of like the IRS, I mean, there's different like classification, like a freelancer, a 1099, an LLC, an S corp. But in the eyes of the IRS, as artists, if we pay our taxes, we're taxed as businesses. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to actually, when I coach artists and like really position like artists and creative as business owners because we're taxed that way. And a lot of people, are more hesitant, but really now there's a lot more, resources for small business owner and a lot of artists and creative don't think of ourselves that way, but we are like a small business. That's how we're taxed, especially if you're a sole proprietor, an LLC, and an S corp. So, in your terms of your question, how do I, kind of balances? It's like being really organized. Like with calendars, I know all of us are like juggling with that in different ways, being, organized about like responding to, again, that being responsiveness, responding to people, but then carving outside time when I can brainstorm, write down ideas into action. Someone asked that question earlier because again, like we all have so much ideas, but really the test is how do we put that into action, make it tangible so that we carry it through? Because people can say a lot of things, but it's usually the action that that really delivers the result. So we want to really hone that in. It doesn't have to be like, one way or the either, like carving time for both, but really making actionable next steps and being really clear. It's almost like creating like a gym schedule for yourself. Okay, I'm gonna go work out. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put it in my calendar and make it really clear because when we break things into smaller steps, it's easier to maintain rather than being like, oh, I want to do this. Is that more like a wish or is that an actually actionable item, like a goal? So that really distinguish and that, this is something that again, so much is happening. How do we carve out and really make things a priority for us if we want to move things forward? Um, Other questions? Someone was like, do I have more than one gig? Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even like, speaking at this webinar, like coaching, it's almost like we are living in such a time where also in like a gig economy too. And to be transparent, I fluctuate sometimes having a day job and sometimes putting together like different, opportunities. Right now, I'm proud to say I'm a full-time artist, but I also do consulting. I teach, doing different things. I find that it's, helpful to have multiple, revenue streams. So it's not just like the one thing as like putting all your eggs into one basket, even as a business owner, if we only depend on one thing, that's really risky because if it doesn't go well, so that's another thing. So like, that's why I said that between like being an artist, creative, as a business owner, as an entrepreneurship, like think of it in that realm that if one thing doesn't work out, there's other options too. So not just depending on one thing. And I feel like the more and more in kind of a gig economy and the culture that we live in, that's becoming more, frequent. But it's always, again, that tricky balance. Who are we surrounding by ourselves? Are we in like partnership? Are we doing it all on our own? Is there family? So there's a lot of, combination. But so to answer that question. Um,
Someone else asked, how do you best utilize social media in your business? Which channel do you find the most useful? Um,
Yes. Yeah, great question. How do I best utilize social media? I always think about kind of the platform. Like right now, I would say for an artist, a visual Instagram kind of is a must because that's where the visual is. Usually when I connect with other artists, it's like, hey, what's your Instagram handle? When I'm applying for an art grant, they want to see your social media. They want to know that you're, presenting your work and kind of is the quickest way to also share your, portfolio too. But I also want to really advocate for a website. And there's, different platform you can create, Squarespace, a little bit more accessible. I think I always coach website as being kind of like your mothership. That's where you have the most control over what you put out. And then social media are almost like tentacles that let people know, but then bring them back to like the mothership because that's where all your work, all so much more stuff that you can put on as much as you want. So social media is more like a glimpse and getting people excited, putting it out there, but you want to point them back to where they can really communicate with you through your website, one-on-one. LinkedIn right now is also really effective too. It started off very job searching, all these things, but I think it's kind of slowly morphing into Facebook. So many more. I've seen people like announce, like, make personal announcement on there, and you can message people. It's really becoming such that kind of platform. But I find it also really like, influential people there, people that you want to build and connect with too. So Instagram, LinkedIn is really effective right now. I also mentioned a newsletter because it gets straight into like someone's inbox. And I've had like, even funders on my newsletter. When I meet people, I'm like, hey, can I add you? That makes it so that when I sent out like a monthly or like bi-monthly newsletter, people know that I'm around. It oftentimes is more a reminder because sometimes I don't, always have the capacity to reach out to people, but if they're on your newsletter list, they know, when you send out stuff that they know to remember you essentially. And that's a great way to just connect with people when you're not able to follow up on them. Yeah, again, things, and that's part of like, in a way, being in conversation, asking, other fellow entrepreneur, fellow like creative, what do you find to be, effective these days? And again, that can also change too with like algorithm trends, but to both be abreast of that, to be in a way that's you're responsive, but again, not just changing your like strategy altogether just because something pops up as like a trend. So that's part of that understanding what is really working and how to best shift so that it's still aligned with what you're trying to build. Um,
I don't think I saw any other questions. So we'll give a last call for questions if you have a question for View. Um, sorry, for Tran. I don't know why I'm referring to you by your last name. Um, I also would like to take this moment to remind you if you enjoyed today's webinar. Tran will actually be joining us in cohort 3 for pitching your business. So she'll be back if you enjoyed hearing from her. I put our application in the chat. And also, it was very nice to see people from cohort 1 and 2 V360 participants. I saw a lot of you also logged on. Um, yeah, so we'll leave a few more minutes if there are any final questions. I also put, and I'll put it in the chat again, I put Tran's website. And also, if you're an artist who'd like to consult with her, um, I also have directions for how to do that, and I'll put those in the chat again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just dropped my Instagram handle. Feel free to follow. We can also continue the conversation. But the coaching thing that Barbara mentioned is that I work with the city of Boston just with their coaching, and so that's a way to like just sign up with me kind of directly, and we can explore different topics. But yeah, just really excited to hear more and just learn more about the just amazing work that we all are doing in our respective communities.
And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, definitely check out WE360 webinar. There's so many cool folks that are a part of it, and this is really such an empowering space. It's like everyone's, journey can be quite different, but how do we share the best practices, what we learn to be effective, what's not so, effective in these times, and how do we just like, equip each other and empower each other with tools and resources. So I'm so appreciative of all the work that YW is doing with this.
So someone asked, this chat is moving quickly, how long is We360 active after the cohort is finished? So everyone who's in the cohort, we run through the end of the year. And after this year is up, everyone who joined We360 will be put in an alumni group, because one of our goals is not just you come and kind of learn the foundational information, but like how do you build community? How do you stay connected with other people who are in your cohort? So everyone who completes the program will, at the end of the year, will be put into our alumni group. Um, and you can still come to events and connect with people and things like that.
Yeah, definitely a cohort alumni kind of experience too.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming and have a good rest of your day.